I think the AI industry has gone about things the wrong way. If you look at where the money and effort has gone, it's in chatbots, agents, image generators, which all of these are just ending up as social media slop. It's clever and it's cute, but it's hard to see value. And that's because all of these tech companies are chasing a specific type of innovation, one which solves new problems in new ways. You see, up until this year, most people didn't realize they needed swarms of agents running around and creating this stuff. That wasn't apparent to any of us. But now, unless you're doing that, you're going to be toast in 18 months. But for all of the spending and investment, very little of it has actually paid off for them. While they're booking revenue, none of the big AI companies are profitable, which means there's a massive gap in value creation. Companies exist to provide value to others. They do that when they sell something to a customer at a price which is more than what it costs them to make. If they don't do that, they're either a charity or they're on investor life support. And that's exactly what's happening. The big tech companies are hemorrhaging investor cash, and people like you and me who use AI regularly are the beneficiaries. So in this video, I want to present a perspective which may explain why they're doing this. I think of innovation as a simple map. The problem is either old or new, and the way you solve it is either old or new. Most of the money in AI is piling into one corner of that map: new problems and new methods. Agents, copilots, autonomous everything. Because if you can get it right, it pays off enormously, but only if you're first. But it's also the riskiest because you're betting on demand that you can't yet see and hope it'll turn up and people are willing to pay for it. A great example of this is the iPhone. Most people didn't realize they needed a phone without a keyboard until Apple made one and explained exactly why you needed it. Now, plenty of people try to do this, but very few succeed, which is why venture capital loves this space so much. But there's actually a corner of that matrix which I think is much more valuable. And that one is not as sexy, but it's an old problem solved in a new way. You start by taking something that people already do, and you rebuild it in a way which includes something that didn't exist when it was first built. That way, the demand is already proven. So the risk isn't, will anyone want this? The risk is, can I execute and will I be able to drive adoption? And that's a very different kind of risk to carry. A good example is Square, the payment platform. Now, taking card payments was already fully solved. Merchants have been doing that for decades through merchant accounts and contracts and all those clunky terminals. Nobody needed convincing that businesses wanted to accept cards. That was done about 100 years ago. What Square did was rebuild that same activity around something that didn't exist when the old system was designed: the smartphone in everyone's pocket. Suddenly the food truck, the market stall, the plumber, they could all take a card with only a $10 dongle. The risk was never, will anyone want this? It was purely the execution and adoption risk. And as long as you could make the hardware work, win trust, and you could then get people to change their habits. Pandas was created in 2008 by Wes McKinney, and it's been one of the biggest success stories in software. If you've done any work on data in the last decade, you've probably used it. There's about 400 million downloads a month. So without exaggeration, this is the lingua franca of data science. But there's a catch. Pandas was built for a world that no longer exists. Back then, a good laptop had maybe 2 gig of memory, and a big data set was a couple of million rows. But because of the architecture on which it's built, it doesn't really support multi-threading and has no native GPU support. Now, I'm not the first person to ask it, but over the years, there have been tools like Pandas and DuckDB, which have gone back and rebuilt the data frame from the ground up. And those tools are also genuinely excellent. I'd point to them as proof of the whole argument that I started with, that rebuilding a proven tool is where a lot of the real value has been hiding. But there's still a gap because Pandas and DuckDB are built for general purpose, mostly cloud, CPU-first hardware. None of them is designed natively for Apple Silicon. They don't use the metal GPU, and they don't exploit the unified memory that makes Mac so special. Now, I didn't set out to do this. I just realized that nothing existed yet in the Apple space which leverages the Apple hardware. So that's why I built SwiftPandas. It's a native port of Pandas. We kept the parts that made Pandas really great, that expressible, readable syntax, and then we rebuilt the engine underneath to make use of the hardware that exists on Apple. So SwiftPandas is written to optimize for Apple Silicon. It's designed for true parallel processing, unlike Python, and it automatically switches between CPU and GPU depending on the workload. I'll make a separate video for those who want all the detail on how it works, but the main thing I want you to take away is that it's significantly faster than Python Pandas, which means that instead of waiting for jobs that might take hours or even days to run, those jobs can be run in minutes. But unlike regular Pandas, it's built exclusively for ARM chips, and makes maximum use of the Apple unified memory. Now, the funny thing is I only realized this was a problem when I started building Kiraa. No matter how hard I tried with Python and Pandas, I could never get my Mac to activate all of its cores, which is why I realized that I had to rebuild Pandas for Apple Silicon. The project is still in beta right now, and I'm talking with universities and other collaborators about setting this up as an open source project. In fact, I'm in Sydney this week having some of those conversations. So if you're interested, I am actively looking for collaborators, engineers, researchers, Apple data nerds, anyone who wants to build the future of on-device data science with us. And this brings me back to the point where I started around innovation. Big tech is racing to invent the new so they can own it and capture the value all for themselves. And fair enough, but there is another path, and that involves reinventing the old. And we can do that without creating monopolies or vendor lock-ins, all the better, I say. I'm Dr. Errol Brandt, the founder of Kiraa AI. If you enjoyed my videos, please like and subscribe, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Thanks very much, and I'll see you in the next one.